Materials and Biology Engineering at the University of Sheffield. And so within NAPIC, I'm actually one of the deputy directors. I'm actually in charge of actually ensuring the financial sustainability of NAPIC. So in the next 10 minutes or so, I'm going to give you a very brief overview of NAPIC and for the benefits of those people who are actually listening NAPIC for the very, very first time. So NAPIC actually stands for National Alternative Protein Innovation Center. And this is actually an innovation and knowledge center funded by BBSRC and also Innovate UK. So our overarching vision is really to help alternative proteins to go mainstream as part of our bigger vision for a sustainable planet. So the center is actually built upon 4 pillars, or the 4P, as you can see in this particular slide here. So if you look at the top left, the first pillar is actually the produce pillar. So this particular pillar is actually led by Professor Derek Stewart from the James Hutton Institute in Dundee. So this particular pillar is all about and all the different carbon feedstock to actually manufacture alternative proteins, for example, like the protein-rich crops, insects, algae, and other biomass. And the second pillar, the second P, is actually the process pillar at the bottom right. And this is actually led by Professor Karen Policy from the Imperial College London. So this particular process pillar is actually all about the different processing technology used to produce and also texturize alternative protein. And this actually cover, for example, like the biomass fermentation, the precision fermentation, culture meats, and other technologies as well. So if you look at the top left, so the third pillar is actually the perform pillar, and this is actually led by Professor Anwesha Saka from the University of Leeds. And Anwesha, and many of you actually know Anwesha, she's actually the lead of the entire NAPIC program. So the perform pillar really look at and the performance of alternative protein in the food products. And this actually cover, for example, like the oral tribology and of alternative protein, texture, and the nutritional contents, and all the things which are actually we care about in a food product. And finally, and last but not least, if you look at the bottom left here, we have the people pillar, and this is actually led by Professor Louis Dye from the University of Sheffield. And in this particular pillar, we actually look at the consumer acceptance, the public perception of alternative protein, and also the policy landscape of governing the alternative protein sector. So you can see that in this diagram here, NAPIC actually adopts a comprehensive approach, and we actually support all forms of alternative protein. As you can see on the top bit of the circle, you can see we actually support all forms of alternative proteins covering cultivated meats, precision fermentation, insect protein, and algae protein, plant-based protein, and so on and so forth. And these are actually not limited to the food and drink industry. And we are also supporting adjacent areas, for example, like the feed industry that actually utilize proteins, peptide as ingredient for production, and also equipment supply as well. So we are trying to build an ecosystem that really bring all the different stakeholders together to really advance the entire sector of alternative proteins. So we are actually a center and a 38 million pounds center underpinned by very, very large support from the Innovate UK and also BBSRC as well. So within this particular map here, this only partially show you some of the partners that we have within NAPIC. And currently, we actually have over 150 partners nationally and also internationally. So we are also accepting new partners across the United Kingdom on a weekly basis. If you are currently not affiliated to NAPIC and would like to actually join NAPIC, please feel free to contact Catherine Miller, who actually gave the introduction just now, and also Helen Morton as well. So, and our grand ambition is really to create actually a connected ecosystem that really bring all the stakeholders, for example, like the academics and researchers, innovators, industry, policymakers, investors, regulators, all together to really advance the entire field. We really want to make sure that UK is actually at the leading position in this very critical sector. We really want UK to become the global powerhouse of alternative protein. At the same time, we are also laying the groundwork to actually develop the national protein strategy to actually guide our long-term development. And you might have actually seen that NAPIC in a lot of different events and food events, alternative protein events, because we are actually, a lot of the work are actually currently underway. So what are the wider impacts of a NAPIC? So we really want to capture the economic opportunity presented by alternate proteins to the United Kingdom. And this particular sector is actually projected to actually be worth 6.8 billion pounds by 2030. And we really want to make sure that UK is actually at the forefront of this particular growth. At the same time, we want to really make a positive contribution to the UK net zero target by actually supporting the development and also adoption of sustainable protein sources. And equally important, we really want to advance public health by promoting access to nutritious and also healthy diets for everyone. And equally important, we are currently actually developing the future workforce to really support the growth of the alternative protein. So we are training our PhD students and postdoc and making sure that they have the right expertise and also transferable skills to actually work in the research and also industry of alternative proteins. So currently we are actually focusing on 4 different areas as shown in this particular slide here. So the work stream number 1 really look at addressing the 6 innovation challenges that we actually co-identify together with the different stakeholders. In fact, we actually run co-development workshop, 2 co-development workshop last year, and these 6 challenges actually came out from that particular workshops. So I will talk a little bit more about the 6 innovation challenges in my next slide. So workstream number 2 really look at co-development of a national knowledge base. So this will be an openly accessible and also authoritative resource to really support all the stakeholders in alternative protein, starting from researchers all the way to policymakers and also investors, making sure that they have the right information to actually make the informed decision. As I mentioned before, we are also putting a lot of effort into preparing the future workforce. And watch this space. There will be lots of emails from NAPIC and telling you about the training opportunities that we are actually organizing. In fact, in October this year, I believe, we are going to organize an IP-related training workshop for the researchers in the sector. And last but not least, we also want to encourage access to the innovation facilities within the UK and also outside the UK to ensure that our researchers, innovators, and also industry have access to the latest technology advanced facility to really expedite their R&D and also commercialization effort as well. So this will be actually my last slide before I actually hand over to Rob. So in the picture on the left-hand side here, you actually see how the 4 pillars actually map to the 6 innovation challenges and listed in this particular slide here. So these challenges are actually the scientific, technological, regulatory, and societal barriers that we must actually address in order to advance the adoption of alternative protein. So number 1 is actually the unlocking nature's potential. So this particular challenge is all about how do we actually enhance the protein yield, protein quality from different biomass resources, for example, like plants, bacteria, insects, and all this. So, and when we look at challenge number 2, protein discovery, and this is actually all about actually identifying key peptides and key protein that actually deliver the desirable attributes. For example, like the texture, sensory appeal, nutrition quality, and how do we actually replicate this in the alternate proteins using advanced tools and also advanced technology. So challenge number 3 actually look at structuring for functional and nutritional benefit, and this is actually quite self-explanatory. So basically, how do we enhance and the alternate protein performance within the food products? At the same time, we really need to maintain the nutritional quality of the food and also addressing some of the key challenges, for example, like allergenicity and also sensory appeal. So when you look at challenge number 4, enabling sustainable bioprocessing at scale. So this is actually looking at how to reduce the cost of production, how to make the process more efficient, how to actually lower the environmental impact of our processes by actually learning from the best practices from the fermentation intensive industry, and also developing new technology to actually support the shift towards continuous and also intensified bioprocesses. And challenge number 5, new matrix and also standard for product quality and also environment. So this really look at how do we actually develop validated framework to actually measure different attributes of alternative protein, for example, like the technical attribute and the safety attribute, the environmental attribute, and the sensory appeal attributes, and all these different important qualities when it comes to food product. And finally, and last but not least, the acceptability and also accessibility addresses the societal and also behavioral dimension of alternative protein. We really want to encourage the consumer acceptance of alternative protein across diverse age group and also from different social economic background as well. So you can see that we are trying to actually address all these 6 challenges using 2 different types of research. Number 1, the frontier interdisciplinary research, and also collaborative research as well. So when you look at frontier interdisciplinary research, this really look at addressing some of the fundamental scientific questions. So within NAPIC, we have actually a set of NAPIC funded researchers trying to address some of these fundamental scientific questions. So today we are actually talking about the collaborative program funding, and this is really looking at collaborative research. How do we actually support commercially viable solution to make sure that we can actually bring more products into the market, and also making sure that we can really bring out the innovation from the entire alternative protein sector. I'm going to stop here now. I think the more important bit is actually the next bit. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Rob.
Thank you, Tuck, for that really nice introduction to what NAPIC's all about. So I'm Rob Hancock. I'm the Deputy Director of the Advancement Growth Centre at the James Hutton Institute, and I'm also a member of the science management team that's been involved in developing this collaborative funding stream. So an immediate background, so the aim of the collaborative funding is essentially to accelerate the alternative protein industry, and we want to do that by bringing together academia and industry to move current research further up the TRL scale, essentially. We have a total of 4 million available to award to these collaborative projects over the period of the Innovation Centre, so roughly around 1 million a year, a little bit less than. And all of these projects need to be co-designed. And what they're co-designed to do is in particular to address market challenges and to move things from academic laboratories out into industry and beyond. And yeah, that's what we say in the next slide, but we want to bridge this gap between innovation and application. We will fund 50% of total project value, and I'll talk more about funding in some of the approving slides, and that funding will go to the academic partners. And yeah, there will be multiple calls over the next few years. So if you don't manage to get something in for this call, then keep an eye on the NAPIC website because other calls will be coming. So just to give you an overview, as I've said, and as Tuck has indicated, there is sort of frontier research going on as part of the NAPIC project. And what we're doing here, what I'm talking about here are this collaborative funding, which moves that frontier research and other research forward towards commercialization. So we have several streams here, as you can see. We've got 2 proof of concept streams with a value of between 100 and 200,000, or up to 100 and up to 200,000. Those will run for 6 to 12 months or 12 to 18 months. And the idea there is to take an existing concept and see if it works, or see if it works in a test environment, and we can move it forward. We have demonstration projects, which are slightly nearer to commercialization, where we want to demonstrate a proven scientific concept in a near market conditions. That's 50,000, 3 to 6 months. We have these innovation sprints, which cover a much sort of broader range of the TRL levels, where we have £20,000 available for these very short 2 to 4 week, very defined projects. And on top of that, we have networking awards to allow people to move between industry and networking awards to bring together industry, academia, regulators, and others around a particular area of issues around alternative proteins. And we have mobility awards to allow movement between academia and industry. As Tuck said, we have sort of 6 innovation challenges, which these projects should attempt to address. He's spoken in quite some detail about those, so I won't repeat all of what he said, but just to say that the scope of these projects, all of these projects need to identify and align with one of our innovation challenges. So the way that the funding works is NAPIC will provide match funding for funding that comes from they'll provide that match funding to the research partner. So that will be any entity in the UK that's eligible for UKRI funding. And that must be matched by our non-research partner. So that could be industry, it could be NGOs, it could be charity, who must provide either a cash or in-kind or a combination of the two grant to value that to value the NAPIC funding. For most of our schemes, in kind and up to completely in kind is an acceptable contribution from the partners. But for that larger proof of concept up to 200,000, the non-industry partner needs to provide a cash funding. NAPIC will then pay the academic partner in a similar way to UKRI funding 80% of the full economic cost of the project. So, for example, if you have a project costing 100,000, the non-research partner needs to provide 50,000 cash or in kind. NAPIC will provide 40,000 to the research partner, and the research partner will need to find the remaining of the gross value of the project. So I'll move on to the next slide. This just gives you a summary of eligibility. So all projects are led by UKRI eligible research organisation. They must all be collaborative, and the vast majority of them need to have as their project partner a UK registered business, a public sector or non-ministerial governmental department, a charity or a not-for-profit. In the mobility awards, international partners are acceptable. However, any finances that NAPIC pay will pay the UK partner to visit that international partner. Match funding must be 50% for all of our projects. For most of the projects, cash or in kind or a combination of the two is acceptable. For those larger proof of concept projects, we require a cash in kind contribution from the industry partner. And you can see that our costs range from the total project costs range from anything between 200,000 for our longer proof of concepts down to around 10,000 for our networking and mobility awards. And for the research projects, you can see that the length of projects there range from about 2 weeks up to around 18 months. So there's quite a lot of flexibility in what we're awarding. So just to give you a little bit more detail on some of the project streams. So our proof of concept funding opportunities are supporting early to mid-stage commercialisation activities. And I'll give you a few examples in some of the later slides of what these may be. And really what we're trying to do is validate concepts that have been developed in a research environment and to move them more into the alternative protein sector and into a real world or commercial setting. And what we're trying to do here is bridge that gap to provide confidence for companies to go, okay, we believe in this technology, we can take this technology forward, we might seek further funding through Innovate UK, and really to help people to drive things from the bench into industry. Our demonstration projects are really around looking at viability of a new technology. So, do we need to develop a prototype? Do we need to develop a pilot? Will they work in real life or close to real life working conditions? Those projects have a total project value up to 50,000 with a 25,000 grant contribution. And our innovation sprints are really about testing very quickly some key ideas that may then provide confidence to actually invest a bit more time and a bit more energy into developing those ideas. And again, I'll give some examples of these projects shortly. Our networking awards are really to bring together academia, industry and or third sector. It's not about bringing together academia and academia. That's the one thing that we certainly would not fund, but really to bring about these different groups to identify problems, to hold training activities, to generate dialogue, to discuss, for example, the regulatory landscape or things like that. And our mobility award is really around supporting individuals, and we're particularly interested in supporting ECRs here, to go into placements either in industry or internationally, to learn new techniques, learn new skills, and to perhaps enhance their commercial knowledge and their commercial skills would be another acceptable way of using this funding. So eligible costs, essentially, if you're used to applying for UKRI funding, that we're essentially operating under the same rules. So we'll cover investigator and research time, we'll cover consumables, we'll cover the cost of access to facilities, we'll cover T&S that's related to the project. What we are unable to provide funding for are studentships. We're not providing funding for mid-scale equipment, anything exceeding 10,000. We're not providing funding for publication. As I've said already, the University of Leeds are holding the NAPIC grant. What they will do is they will reimburse academic partners at 80% of FEC. I've already said that international organisations can partner in mobility awards. However, that funding goes solely to the UK-based research organisation. So it would allow, for example, someone to travel overseas. It would not pay for somebody overseas to travel to the UK. Well, to travel to the UK, although we could perhaps cover things like bench fees for someone who was coming overseas to the UK. The application process. So the first thing to do is develop your idea and make sure it aligns with our scope. So those are the knowledge pillars that presented previously, and you need to ensure that they address the innovation challenges. You need to talk to your non-research partner, and you need to ensure that your non-research partner is willing to provide 50% match funding, cash or in kind. And then once you've done that, you'll need to prepare your application and upload your application. It's a relatively light touch application. We provide a document to allow you to go through that application. You'll need to provide a project plan that describes interdependencies, milestones and deliverables. You'll need a letter of support from your head of school or your commercial director from your industry partner. You'll need to say that you have an intellectual property plan, although we're not asking people to put those agreements into place until you've received the award. But you need to demonstrate to us that you have a process for doing that. We need a declaration of partner contribution. For cash, it's very easy. For in kind, we just need things to understand things like personnel time that's going to be put into it, access to facilities, perhaps use of pilot plants, those sorts of things. The financial information is providing, and we're also asking people to provide equality, diversity and inclusion data. That is then reviewed by members of the science management team and the broader academic community, people who have no conflicts. A decision is then provided, and an award letter would be issued by an NAPIC. You would then need to develop a collaboration agreement, sign your sub-award letter, present your collaboration agreement, and then project delivery can commence. We then ask for the proof of concept projects for an interim report. These again will be fairly light touch. A final report for all projects, and then we'd also like to keep in touch with you and to monitor impact going forward. Has this led to anything else? Have you taken the research forward? Has anything been commercialised? The timeline for the current call. This is the last of the roadshows. The call closes on the 11th of July, and people will be notified of whether they've been successful in receiving funding on the 22nd of September. All of these details will be obtained on the call funding page. If you go to the NAPIC website, there's actually a button at the very top of that website, which takes you directly to funding, or you can also contact us directly via funding@napic.ac.uk. Just to discuss a few other things, I'd like to draw your attention to the inaugural NAPIC conference, which is taking place in this rather striking diamond building at the University of Sheffield on the 15th and 16th of September. This will again bring together academia and industry, perhaps give you opportunities to develop partnerships for future funding calls. We have a plenary speaker in Bruce Frederick from the Good Food Institute, Again, I believe that registration is now open. You'll again find at the NAPIC website a direct link that can take to that NAPIC inaugural conference if you wish to register for that. And you can, we've just begun. Please stay in touch. You can contact us through general inquiries, questions about funding to funding@napic.uk, and please follow us on LinkedIn. And I will stop there, and now is an opportunity to take questions.